how wonderful it is to live here in Europe alongside people of so many religions and nationalities, staying together through thick and sire, I just did the math. We don't have enough food to make it through the winter. Gentlemen, please, things may be dire now, but this is not the first time our people have faced hardship. Our ancestors faced this and much more, and they always endured. How did they do that, sire? Well, I'm glad you asked, Thomas. The solution is simple. We beat up the Jews. How does that solve anything? And Thomas. We beat up the Jews and Thomas. Antisemitism has a long history and many different reasons. Some Christians saw Jews as responsible for the death of Christ, and the fact that Jews were usually minorities in the countries they lived in meant that they had little political power, which made them great scapegoats in time of crisis. Even before the Holocaust, there were countless pogroms in Europe. So in the late 19th century, a movement began for the Jewish people to find a place they could call home, and where no one would pogrom them anymore. This was the beginning of Zionism. A bunch of influential Jews formed the World Zionist Organization and came up with options for a possible homeland. But the lucky winner was Israel, the land that they believe had been promised to them by God and from where they had been expelled by the Romans almost 2,000 years ago. There was just one slight problem. There were already people living there, the Palestinians. While some Zionists wished for Arabs and Jews to live side by side in harmony, the majority believed that Jews would never be safe unless they had a state with a majority Jewish population. How can we make a majority Jewish population if there are only 4% Jews and over 90% Arabs? Well, we will take the land from them. How? It's simple. We'll harass them until they get out. As soon as we have a big settlement here and become strong, we will expel them from the west bank of the Jordan River too. Let them go back to the Arab countries. Unfortunately, European Zionists, just like many Europeans at the time, were also very racist. In a time in which Europe was committing unspeakable atrocities across the world, the need of a few 100,000 Arabs were of little concern to them. Chaim Weizmann, president of the Zionist organization, would later say, "The British told us that there are some 100,000 Negroes in Palestine, and for those, there is no value." Interestingly, then just like today, many of the most fervent Zionists were not Jewish. Many Christians have been supporting the Zionist movement since its inception, believing that a Jewish return to their historical homeland would cause the return of Christ, and all faithful would go to heaven, while all non-believers, including the Jews, would go to hell to suffer for eternity. It seems odd, but in the US today, the largest base of support for Israel are not American Jews, but evangelical Christians. What also seems odd is that you have not yet heard of World of Warships, today's sponsor. World of Warships is a massive multiplayer online game that allows you to command a massive naval fleet and relive some of history's most pivotal moments on the seas. Their ships are designed to be hyper-accurate and as close as it gets to the real thing. You can choose from over 40 maps, many of them recreations of historical harbors and port towns. And since this year marked the 80th anniversary of D-Day, World of Warships has launched a special event to commemorate this historic moment. New PvP and PvE missions, special skins and new commanders will immerse you right into the battle of D-Day. You can command new legendary vessels, strategize with your fleet in new missions, and dominate the waves in thrilling battles inspired by the events of June 6, 1944. World of Warships is an incredibly fun game to play by yourself or with friends that I myself have spent quite a few hours on. And it is also available for consoles. If you sign in using my link in the description, you will get a bunch of doubloons, 7 days premium time, 1,000,000 credits, special D-Day missions, and a choice from one of these cool ships. So sign in now using my link in the description. Anyways, it was decided that Palestine would become Israel. But how could this be achieved? The strategy was simple. In Palestine, most of the land was owned by wealthy individuals living abroad. For centuries, Palestinians lived and worked on land that did not belong to them, and when the landowner decided to sell, the Palestinians living there would continue to do so. But the Zionist organization formed the Jewish National Fund, which became the agency through which the Zionists purchased land for Jews to settle. This guy became heavily involved in making sure that Jews would evict the Palestinians from their newly purchased land, even if they didn't plan to live on it. The Jewish National Fund also began a secondary mission to carefully document each village, gather information of their defenses, layout, and inhabitants. This information would be vital in the conflict ahead. When World War I broke out, the British looked for ways to gain support and influence from the Arabs. During the Hussein MacMahon correspondence, check out my Lawrence of Arabia video if you don't know what that is, they promised independence to the Arabs in exchange for their help against the Ottomans. But the British also realized the importance of control over the Middle East, and they saw in Zionism an opportunity to create a European forward base in a strategic location. One of the founders of Zionism, Theodor Herzl, said it himself: the Jewish state would form a part of a wall of defense for Europe in Asia, an outpost of civilization against barbarism. With this in mind, Lord Balfour, former British Prime Minister and currently Foreign Secretary, made an official declaration in which he promised to establish in Palestine a national home for the Jewish people, understanding that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. Now, don't get confused. Balfour's support for Zionism was not because of his love for the Jewish people. In 1905, while many Jews escaped Russia to flee the pogroms by the brutal Tsar, Lord Balfour, as Prime Minister, presided over the passage of an act that put firm restrictions on immigration into Great Britain. Balfour wrote in 1919, the Zionist movement would mitigate the age-long miseries created for Western civilization by the presence in its midst of a body which it too long regarded as alien and even hostile, but which it was equally unable to expel or to absorb. Balfour did not make his declaration to give the Jews a place to go. It was about giving them a place to leave to. Another problem was that he only mentioned the native Arabs as non-Jewish communities and only guaranteed their religious and civil liberties, not their political rights. The needs of the Arabs were of no concern to him, as he had a mild case of being insanely racist. He was recorded saying, "We have to face the facts. Men are not born equal. The white and black races are not born with equal capacities. They are born with different capacities, which education cannot and will not change." Despite all this, the Balfour Declaration was incredible news for the Zionists. It meant that Great Britain, one of the largest superpowers in the world, would officially support them. But the Balfour Declaration might as well have been a war declaration for the native Palestinians, who began to realize that the Jewish state would be created at their expense. With help from the British, Chaim Weizmann established the first Zionist office in Jerusalem in August 1918. A Jewish newspaper wrote a few years later, "The Jews must purify their homeland Palestine of those who have usurped it. The Muslim inhabitants of Palestine must go to the Hijaz and the desert, and its Christian inhabitants must move to Lebanon." In February 1920, the British military governor of Palestine confirmed in a public statement that the British would try to establish a Jewish national homeland in Palestine, which led to large protests and violent clashes between the local population and Jewish settlers, even leading to the death of a Jewish soldier. During the feast of the prophet Moses, Arabs celebrating felt threatened by Jewish settlers nearby, who they believed were being challenging. This escalated, leading to more violent clashes both in Jerusalem and Tel Hai, in which 5 Jews and 4 Arabs died, with hundreds more injured. Realizing that the local Palestinians were beginning to resist their colonial project, the Zionists founded a paramilitary organization called Haganah. Apart from the riots, Palestinians also resisted through peaceful means. They formed congresses comprised of both Muslims and Christians, and sent letters to the British, the Paris Peace Conference, and even the League of Nations, advocating for their self-determination. Hello there! I know you guys have been asking for independence and an end to the Zionist colonial project. We hear you and would be glad to find a solution that makes everyone happy. That's great, it's all we want. There's just one tiny small thing. I need you to accept our rule and the Balfour Declaration before we begin negotiating. But that goes completely against what we wanted. Oh, also I'm appointing this Zionist Jew as the High Commissioner of Palestine. In 1920, the League of Nations created the British Mandate for Palestine, officially putting it under their control. The mandate document included the Balfour Declaration in its preamble, almost word for word, and strongly encouraged Jewish immigration by giving them Palestinian nationality. It also essentially allowed for the creation of a Zionist administration parallel to the British mandatory government. With the power to control health, education, public works, Palestinians were given no such political power. The British Foreign Secretary strongly opposed this document. 580,000 Arabs and 30,000 Jews live in the country. We then proceed to draw up a document that is an avowed constitution for a Jewish state. The poor Arabs are only allowed to look through the keyhole as a non-Jewish community. Indeed, the Arabs were not happy about the conditions of the mandate. On May 1, 1921, clashes broke out during a protest between communist and anti-communist Jews. After being dispersed by the police, some of the protesters then marched into an Arab neighborhood, and the locals thought the Jews were demonstrating against them. Tensions escalated, leading to the death of 47 Jews and 49 Palestinians, with another 200 injured. After this blood spill and another Palestinian diplomatic mission in London, Winston Churchill, who was Minister of Colonies, became convinced that the British had no choice but to promise something to please the Arabs. I know that some of you are a bit upset about the way we've handled things so far, so I hope this white paper will set things straight. The Balfour Declaration did not mean that Palestine would become a home for the Jews, but rather that there would be a home for Jews in Palestine. And a Jewish national home does not mean a Jewish state. That's two very different things. Jewish immigration can continue, but we have to restrict it a little. Also, I know that during the Hussein McMahon correspondence we kind of promised you independence, but that's not happening, so suck it up already. Good. There's no way this would make anyone upset. This white paper completely ignored the core Palestinian demands, as it did nothing to halt the expanding Zionist project. So they held more conferences and continued to show their anger at the Zionist project. Things went from bad to worse when some prominent Zionists, such as David Ben-Gurion and Menachem Usishkin, made declarations expressing desire for the Temple Mount to be taken over by the Zionists. But this place was also one of the holiest places for Muslims, as it was the location of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. In 1929, Jews erected a cloth dividing the prayer zone between men and women, as was customary in synagogues. While this was not an attempt to take over, it was received by many Muslims as an appropriation of their holy site. Could you guys please just take it down? Oh, I'll take you down. Whoa, everyone calm down. This holy site belongs to the Arabs, but Jews have and will continue to have permission to visit it. Are we all clear now? Great, another tense situation diffused. But the situation was not diffused. Once again, the British made everything worse. Jews demonstrated against these statements on August 15th. They raised their Zionist flag and even sang their anthem in the holy site, while also making fiery speeches calling for control of the wall. The next day, it was the Palestinians who protested and got rid of the supplicatory notes that the Jews had left in their holy site. Both Arabs and Jews were now furious at each other. Tensions burst into violence in Nablus, Pisan, Haifa, Jaffa, Acre, Jerusalem, and Hebron. Palestinians and Jews retaliated against each other's attacks, committing unspeakable atrocities. In the end, 133 Jews and 115 Palestinians died, with over 500 injured. Most of the Jews were killed by Arabs in brutal massacres, while most of the Arabs were killed by the British, who sided with the Jews. But many Arabs knew that not all Jews were Zionists, and during the violence, Palestinian families in Hebron concealed and protected Jewish families in their own homes, sometimes at the expense of their own lives. Hey, quick question. What in the ever-loving was that? Well, sir, people back home are really afraid because they think that the Jews are trying to take over the land. I see. No worries. This white paper stresses the importance of giving Palestinians some autonomy and stopping Jewish immigration to Palestine. This will fix everything. I will resign if you do that. Whoa, because of this dumb little paper? Don't worry. Let's just forget about the whole thing. During the 1930s, antisemitism was rising in Europe, especially in Germany. With the US, the UK, and other countries having discriminatory laws that limited Jewish immigration into their own countries, many Jews felt that they had no place to go but Palestine. Wait, shouldn't we maybe stop being so anti-Semitic that the Jewish people feel forced to migrate abroad and cause a massive regional problem elsewhere? Did anyone hear something? No? Oh, that's weird. Anyways, in 1914, Jews were just under 5% of the population in Palestine. By 1934, they had become almost 26%. And while Jewish immigrants were given economic privileges in employment, investment, and taxation, Palestinians suffered from economic stagnation. To make matters worse, some Jewish communities began to publicly train their paramilitary forces in a direct provocation to the local Arabs. And sometimes they even raided Arab villages. Palestinians once again protested across the country. The protests were violently quelled, leaving 30 dead and hundreds injured, including Musa Kathem al-Husseini, one of the leaders of the Palestinian Congress, who later died from his wounds. In October 1935, an Arab worker at Jaffa port had discovered by chance a large shipment of arms hidden in barrels of cement that were meant for the Haganah, and it became evident that this was not the first time it had happened. Over a decade of protests, congresses and delegations had left Palestinians feeling like they had exhausted every possible diplomatic solution, and the British had made it clear that they would never cave to their demands. So far, much of the violence the Arabs had engaged in was a reaction to some sort of Jewish or British action or provocation. But now, Palestinians would become proactive as underground groups began to form, aspiring to fight for national independence from the British. Is al-Din al-Qassam formed armed bands that began to strike British forces as he prepared for a full-blown rebellion. But in November 1935, al-Qassam and his men were surrounded by British police. Unwilling to surrender, al-Qassam encouraged his men to die fighting, and he fell after a fierce battle. Al-Qassam became a martyr, a symbol of Palestinian resistance against the occupiers, and inspired many more to rise in arms. On April 15, 1936, a group of Al-Qassam's followers shot 3 Jews, killing 2 of them. The following night, a group of Jews killed 2 Arabs as retaliation. The funeral for the killed Jews turned into a large demonstration during which Jews shouted anti-Arab slogans. The Arabs then set up a supreme committee which assumed the responsibility of running the revolt. The Grand Mufti, Haj Amin al-Husseini, was unanimously chosen as chairman of the committee. The Arab National Committee called for a general strike throughout all Palestine, announcing that it would continue until the British put a stop to Jewish immigration. The British government used all means available to break the strike and end the revolt, including the demolition of large parts of the old neighborhood in Jaffa, where they blew up more than 220 houses. The British also arrested, killed, and tortured many Palestinians, while ignoring their demands by allowing the entry of another 4,500 Jewish settlers. In July 1937, the British published the Peel Commission's report, recommending that Palestine be partitioned into two states, one for the Arabs and one for the Jews. The Jews agreed, but the Palestinians refused outright. From their point of view, it was their land. Most of the Jewish settlers had not even been in the country for more than 2 decades. The partition plan would not only give them a large portion of land, but also require the expulsion of 200,000 Palestinians from their lands. The rebellion turned even more bloody, and Arab rebels attacked bridges, railway tracks, oil pipelines, and even Jewish settlements. The British banned the Arab High Committee and expelled many prominent Palestinian leaders from the country, including Haj Amin al-Husseini. The Palestinians replied by escalating their violence and even assassinating Captain Louis Andrews, the British High Commissioner of the Galilee. The British armed and trained tens of thousands of Jews, which severely strengthened the growing Jewish paramilitaries. At the same time, the Jews also accelerated the construction of settlements, knowing that the borders of a future partition of the land would likely consider the location of settlements, and they developed a settlement method called tower and stockade, in which settlements were set up and populated literally overnight, with a wall around them and a watchtower for defense. In just 3 years, they built over 50 such settlements, as Jewish political parties increased the illegal immigration into the country to bypass British limits. The Irgun, an offshoot of the Haganah, was notorious for responding to Arab terror with their own. The suppression of the revolt was so violent that any Palestinian found in possession of even a single bullet could be executed on the spot. Tired of having their convoys and trains ambushed by Palestinians, the British began tying Palestinian civilians to the front of their cars and locomotives to prevent attacks, a tactic they had also implemented against the Irish during their war for independence. And just like in Ireland, the British demolished the houses of presumed rebels and sometimes even of their family members, as they imprisoned anyone remotely suspected of being part of the rebellion. Many Palestinians would be held in what the British themselves called concentration camps, the most notable one being in Sarafand. During the revolt, the Palestinians managed to take control of a large portion of the country, and on November 9, 1938, the British government published a declaration abandoning the partition plan. They met with Palestinian and Jewish representatives to discuss possible solutions, and even considered granting independence to the Palestinians. But rumors spread that the British were planning to declare the independence of Palestine, and now it was the Jews who started a terror campaign. They threw grenades at Arab gatherings, killing over 40 people and injuring almost 100. Without an agreement, and with British reinforcements arriving, the Europeans regained control. By the end of the revolt, there were 100,000 British soldiers in Palestine, 1 for every 4 adult men. The revolt left 10% of the entire adult male Palestinian population either dead, wounded, exiled, or imprisoned. The Arab revolt during this period claimed over 500 Jewish and more than 4,000 Palestinian lives. The Palestinians were left divided, without clear leadership, in a deep economic crisis, and overall, simply debilitated. By the spring of 1939, it became clear that the world was headed for another world war, and the British wished to stabilize their hold over Palestine. So the last couple white papers didn't work out all that well, but no worries. I just negotiated a great deal with Hitler and completely prevented another world war, so let me now solve this crisis. This new white paper will put a limit to Jewish immigration and land sales, and you will get representative institutions within 5 years and self-determination within 10, as long as the Jewish Agency approves it. Another crisis averted. The crisis, however, was very much not averted. The Palestinian leaders knew that this was not an honest attempt to grant them their desires, but merely a deceit to pause the revolt until Britain would be in a position to suppress them once again. The Zionists were even more displeased and turned to violence and terror to express their opposition. In 1940, a branch of the Irgun split and turned into the Lehi, a self-proclaimed terrorist organization. With the outbreak of World War II, the Palestinian Revolt gradually died down. The British worked alongside the Haganah and trained a defensive militia to counter a possible German invasion, which became a real threat between 1941 and 1942, when Syria and Lebanon were held by Vichy forces. A pro-German revolt occurred in Iraq, and the German army reached El Alamein in Egypt. Thousands of Palestinian Jews fought alongside the British against Nazi Germany. The British created a special unit made exclusively of Palestinian Jews, which cemented the basis of a well-trained and organized military. They also formed an elite strike force for the Haganah, called the Palmach. But the Lehi believed that the British were a bigger threat to Zionism than the Nazis themselves for having restricted Jewish immigration. So they sought alliances with Fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, hoping to build a Jewish state on the basis of nationalist and totalitarian principles. The Lehi would fight the British throughout the war. At the same time, Haj Amin al-Husseini also reached out to Hitler, promising an uprising against the British and Jews in exchange for support. However, Hitler was more interested in his fight against the Soviet Union, and nothing concrete came out of this meeting. It is important to note that both sides' attempts to reach out to Nazi Germany were mostly politically motivated, in an enemy of my enemy type of way. As I mentioned, thousands of Palestinian Jews fought against the Nazis, much more than those who wished to join it. And over 12,000 Palestinian Arabs volunteered to fight for the British army. But there was one crucial difference. There was no single Palestinian unit, which made it harder for post-war Palestinians to take advantage of their combat experience, while Jews would return to Palestine with a cohesive, armed and trained military organization. As it became clear that the US would become a superpower, the Zionists began to try to obtain its support. In 1942, prominent Zionist leaders met in New York City at the Biltmore Hotel and publicly declared their intention to take control of all of Palestine and to establish a Jewish state. They also called for unlimited immigration into Palestine and the establishment of an approved military force there. As the world learned about the horrors of the Holocaust, the US Congress and even President Truman fully endorsed the Zionist project. And as the German defeat became imminent, the Irgun joined the Lehi in their actions against the British in Palestine, hoping to force them to change their policies or to get out of Palestine altogether. The Lehi assassinated the British Minister of State for the Middle East in Cairo in November 1944, and after the war, the Zionists established the Jewish Resistance Movement, which liberated illegal immigrants from detention camps, blew up a British radar station that was designed to detect incoming ships with illegal immigrants, as well as railway tracks, and during the Night of the Bridges, they even blew up 11 bridges connecting Palestine to adjacent countries. The Jewish Insurgency left over 100 British and at least 50 Jews dead. The Arab deaths are harder to estimate, but are somewhere between several hundred and 5,000. During Operation Agatha, the British authorities arrested over 2,000 Jews and confiscated a large amount of weapons. They also confiscated large quantities of documents that implicated the Haganah in the Jewish Insurgency. The British stored these documents at their headquarters at the King David Hotel. The Irgun blew up the British offices at the hotel to eliminate the evidence, killing 91 people and injuring 46 more. During the Arab Revolt, many Palestinian leaders were killed, imprisoned for years, or exiled. But during the Jewish Insurgency, their leadership was already out just 4 months after their arrests. World War II is over, yay us! But now there are hundreds of thousands of Jews who survived the Holocaust and they need a new home. Well, that's easy to fix. Let's help them go to their former countries if they want to, and if not, maybe the UK can take some of them in. Or you Americans, you have plenty of space back home. I'm sure you can fit them in somewhere. Yeah, I know. We barely let them in during the Holocaust. We're not doing it now. Yeah, that's what Palestine is for. Europeans and the Americans saw Palestine and the Zionist movement as a way to both relieve their guilt for centuries of anti-Semitism, while also getting rid of Jews and setting up a Western outpost in the Middle East. There was little to no concern about what this might mean for the native Palestinians, who were already seeing a proto-state emerging as the British violently suppressed any attempts to form their own. Come on, things I care about, you're exaggerating. Unfortunately, I am not. Let me quote Churchill's comments when asked about the Balfour Declaration and how it could be an injustice to Palestinians. I do not agree that the dog in a manger has the final right to the manger, even though he may have lain there for a very long time. I do not admit that right. I do not admit, for instance, that a great wrong has been done to the Red Indians of America or the Black people of Australia. I do not admit that a wrong has been done to these people by the fact that a stronger race, a higher grade race, a more worldly wise race, to put it that way, has come in and taken their place. The reality was that Palestinians were facing a colonial project that had worldwide support and the outspoken goal of driving them from their land, and there was little they could do about it. The Palestinians at this point had no foreign ministry, no diplomats, and no centrally organized military force. In 1947, the Arab National Fund was trying to raise money for Palestine, and after a year had managed to collect about 176,000 Palestinian pounds. To put this into perspective, a single rich Jewish widow from apartheid South Africa had gifted the Jewish National Fund 1 million Palestinian pounds. In March 1945, a bunch of Arab countries formed the Arab League, but refused to allow Palestine to participate. Keep in mind that all these countries had only recently become independent, and their foreign policy was still incredibly influenced by the British. But the British were now weakened by the World War, and it had become obvious that the mess they created in Palestine was out of their control, so they began looking for a way out. The Zionists, led by David Ben-Gurion, began to prepare for the fight that would come. They came up with several plans, but ended up going for Plan C. The purpose of this plan would be to mask an offensive by retaliating with disproportionate strength to any Arab attack or provocation. Plan C was very clear about the punishments they would inflict. It also made clear that all data required could be found in the village files that the Jewish National Fund had been preparing for decades.